Wonder why it's so hard to maintain long-term results when you go on a weight loss plan, a diet, or whatever it is? Why is it so hard? Why do we fall out of practice or out of doing those things that we know worked to get us to our goal? Well, today on this episode, I'm going to be interviewing someone whose specialty is helping women building those habits and changing their identity. So, welcome to episode 24 of the Lighter Way podcast. I'm your host, Robin Weisner, and today we are talking to Sabrina Magnan. She is a board certified health coach, mindset, and habit coach. She helps women who feel like they've been dieting their entire life and still can't get results. The type of women like me who carry lots of guilt and shame. And we're going to talk about two things that you can do to create long lasting, sustainable change. And a hint, it starts with your identity. Are you ready for this one? I know I am. Let's go. Well, welcome, Sabrina. I'm so glad you're here on the Lighter Way podcast. I've been looking forward to this interview for a couple of weeks now, and I'm really looking forward to diving into talking about how identity is, part of our changing and lasting transformation. And I loved your presentation at your Healthiest Years Summit. It was so amazing. And there's something there I wanted to ask you about. So, why are you so obsessed about habits? What is the deal with habits?
So it's funny. Anyone who knows me well will describe me in one way is I am a creature of routine. And I think that habits are going to be the thing that is going to shape what your future is going to look like,
Mm,
because habits are so important in the way that they make you and make your life so much easier or so much harder. Because once you create the right habits and you turn them on autopilot, you don't even have to think about it anymore. And it's kind of like this compounding effect that's making your life better, improving the quality of your life without
mhm.
having to struggle and think about it every single day.
So true. You think about you hear the term decision fatigue. Like we all, it's so common. I mean, whether it's deciding what show to watch or which exit to take on the highway or what to wear, we make so many, thousands, if not more, decisions all day. When we have habits in place, that's something that we just do automatically. It makes our life so much easier. It reduces stress, and it's just like kind of the fabric of who we are. We can have a lot of negative habits or we can have a lot of positive habits. So, um, tell me a little bit more about like what you do, how you help women, and how you work habits all into this process.
Yeah, so I am a health mindset and habit coach, and the name of my program is Healthy by Habit. So, of course, habit is a big component of it. Permanent, long term, sustainable behavior change. And all wrapped into that, I help chronic dieters who feel like they have tried everything. They've done the keto and the intermittent fasting and the Weight Watchers, and they always fall back into their old habits. And with every new diet, they internalize a new set of rigid food rules and restrictions and things that they can or cannot eat. So, along the process of starting to doubt themselves and starting to distrust their own body and harm their relationship with food, they also start doubting their ability to ever actually make a lasting change,
Mhm.
because we take in all of this information, all of these lived experiences, and we start taking it in as fact. Oh, well, if I've never been able to do this, then I will never be able to figure this out. There is something wrong with me. I am
Mhm.
broken. This is something that I hear in so many of the women who come to me. I'm a failure. I have failed so many times before, and I've almost lost hope that I can ever make a permanent change. And so I look at so many facets and so many areas that are crucial when it comes to making that long-term change. Your mindset, how you are going about behavior change, what your relationship with food even is, because it goes
Mhm.
far beyond what you eat. It goes about how you feel about food, how you eat, and your environment around it. So I look at all of these different things and I break it down step by step so that we like strip down the overwhelm and the confusion from all
Yeah.
of the overload of information that you find online, and it becomes simplified. It becomes something that makes sense for their lifestyle, for their unique personality, their unique needs. And that way, it's something that becomes part of who they are, not
Yeah.
just something that they will power their way through.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I talk to so many women, same, especially women that are over 40, because most likely they are chronic dieters. I mean, we just grew up with it and our body has just been beaten up and our, like you said, our trust has been broken. That when I first, understood that we continue to break trust with ourselves because we set these unrealistic expectations. We tend to buy into perfectionist mindset, and then we don't give ourselves that grace, or we don't celebrate our victories, and then we start feeling like we've let ourselves down, and it can be such a downward spiral. And that's just something that's heavy on my heart with the women that I help too. I don't like to see women that are without hope that they'll ever be free from food. I would love to hear your story if you ever struggled with your relationship with food. But for me, I definitely did. I was, thought about it all the time. It's like it seemed to be the norm that you're either on a diet or not on a diet. If you're not on a diet, you're probably getting fat. Like that's was going on in my head, right? And
Yeah.
wow, when somebody explains to you it's not like that, when it finally clicks, it's just it just blows your mind. And then you have to start just peeling back those layers of all your beliefs, right?
And I absolutely had the same experience. For me, it started when I was 16 years old. And right there, you're in the ripe age of being vulnerable and of
Mhm.
comparing yourself to other people and believing anything that you see online. And so there's, especially now, it's more and more toxic of seeing
Yeah.
these influencers of what I eat in a day or how a day in my body looks like. And you see the surface level of what's going on, and you see these like before and after pictures, and you think, I can do that. I can become that success story. But before and after pictures, that is just the window view of what is going on, and you do not see what their relationship with food is like, what's going on inside their head, and
Mhm.
most importantly, we see the before and after. We don't see the after, the 5 months later, the year later, the 5 years later. We see a snapshot in time,
Mhm.
but there is no studies that have shown that dieting works long term.
Yeah. Amen. I mean, and I used to be the worst of promoting that stuff. I was in a network marketing group. I did the before and afters and all that kind of stuff. And I admit, like, it wasn't the after. And there's lighting and there's positioning and there's, all this stuff. And I didn't know better at the time. So I regret that I didn't know better at the time. But now I'm passionate like you are to stop that whole diet culture. I mean, we know diets don't work, but what, can you expand on why don't diets work?
Oh, do you
I mean,
have
it,
2
it is,
hours?
I know, right?
Okay, well, let's start with the fact that it's short term, right? Because a lot of these diets, they require extreme changes to your lifestyle. We go from 0 to 100. We go from I'm starting on Monday, or I'm starting on January 1st, and we try to shift our lifestyle. I'm going to cut out the carbs. I'm going to stop eating after 7 p.m. And a lot of the times what you're doing is you're trying to willpower your way to a goal weight
Yeah.
or to a certain size. And willpower is a finite resource. I don't like this thing that goes around that says willpower is a muscle, you just got to strengthen it. No, willpower is like your phone battery. It starts
Mhm.
off full at the beginning of the day, and by the end of the day, you need to recharge it because it's gone. And so we are confused why we tend to binge or overeat at the end of the day or on the weekend. It's because you can only sustain that kind of willpower for so long. And
Mhm.
on top of that, what you're doing is you're putting an emphasis on the thing that you don't want to be thinking about,
Yeah.
which is food. So when you
Yes.
are telling yourself, and this is like a concept that applies to kids, you tell a kid they can't use a toy, they're going to want to use that toy over any other one.
Yep.
You tell someone not to think about a white elephant, your brain is going to go to that white elephant. It's just it's a universal law, and the same thing goes with food. When you start telling yourself you cannot have something, you shouldn't have something, you're putting that food on a pedestal, and you start
Mm.
thinking about it more and more and more until eventually you break and you cave, because that is just simple human behavior, a human reaction to restriction. And because you've been thinking about it so much, and you have this mentality of, okay, well, I shouldn't be having this. I'm going to have as much as I can now, and then I'm going to start again on Monday. This cycle just restarts over and
Yeah.
over again.
So true. And as you were saying, you were talking about willpower as a limited resource. I don't know if I've ever heard it quite said that way. And I was thinking how willpower, and maybe you agree or not, but willpower is kind of part of decision making too, right? I mean, if we're going to will something, we have to decide to do it. So if we're already making a million decisions all day, we get to the end of the day when we're tired, we have decision fatigue, i.e., willpower is not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yet we're sold this story that no, you just need to work that willpower. Just, deny yourself more, restrict more, and then it will get better. And then when that doesn't happen, we feel like it's our fault. And then the whole disordered eating starts just cycling. I mean, I'm speaking from experience. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard. It makes me mad. It actually makes me really mad.
Yeah, I don't know if you can tell by my voice. It is something that I'm so passionate about. And
Yeah.
what you said, we start to blame ourselves.
Mhm.
It's like in any other areas of our life. Let's say our car is broken and we bringing to a mechanic, and it's there for hours or days, and you pay for it and you put all that into the mechanic, and then you bring it home and the car doesn't work. You don't blame yourself for the
Right.
car not working, you blame the mechanic. But
Yep.
when it comes to diets, we put energy and we put time into this approach that has been shown to fail 95% of the time. And then when it
Mhm.
does eventually fail, we don't blame the diets, we blame ourselves for
Yep.
not being good enough.
Yep. It's so true. And this podcast, this episode is going to be released around the holidays. So yeah, tell whatever anybody tries to sell you something, you just send them Sabrina's way, send them my way. We'll tell them like, get out of here. Leave her
Mhm.
alone. We're not buying your bill of goods. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah. I mean, this is like prime time where the diet culture is just preying on women that are losing hope that they'll ever, get in. And it's not really, they think what they want is to lose the weight to be in a smaller body, but really it's the maybe the quality of life they want to experience, or the values that they want to experience. And I know you talk a lot about identity tied into that. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Absolutely. So, when it comes to habit change and when it comes to long term behavior change, a lot of people, the reason why they struggle so hard to stick to these new habits, this is a common complaint, is I keep falling back into my old habits. I try to do something and I do it. I'm really good for a couple of weeks, and then something happens, I'm stressed out, and then I fall off the wagon. And the reason why so many people do struggle with that is because they go about it just the completely wrong way. And I talk about it in the summit, is how there are three layers to behavior change. And the most surface layer one, which is kind of like the outside of an onion, is focusing on the outcome. Right. So I've got this goal. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to write a book, whatever it is. And you just focus on that goal. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to do whatever it takes to
Mm-hmm.
get to that goal. And most of the time, when it comes to dieting, that requires hating the process. I don't think I've met many people who are like, I'm on a diet right now and I am loving it. Like I love not eating the foods that I enjoy. I love being hungry most of the time. No
Mm-hmm.
one does that.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the times when you're doing that outcome based behavior change, what happens when you do, if you do get to that goal? If
Yeah.
you never learned to manage your mindset, manage the things that are important, like self sabotage and positive thinking and self esteem and your environment and who you are, and believing that you are capable of doing something. And the thing is, diets will never address that. Diets will tell you, here's what you should eat, here's what you shouldn't. Let's slap a band aid solution on what we think is your goal, when really there is, like, it's the iceberg metaphor. There's so much more that goes on underneath it that
Mhm.
never gets addressed.
It's so true. I mean, in this type of mindset you're talking about there, the correct one, and that really just came to me like in the last 2 years, year and a half. I was all into the before and afters, and like I didn't know any different, but understanding so much that underlie, and that's what happened with me in my own journey, is that I would do the things, I would go through the behaviors, the extrinsic, motivation, and then I would get some results, but then I would just slip right back, and I was so frustrated. And just one day I remember standing in my kitchen and saying, I can't think correctly about food. I never even, who ever heard of a relationship with food, right? I think we hear about it a lot because of the circles that we're in, because of what we do. But I don't know that most people hear that about having a relationship with food. It's just kind of, this is what I do when I'm stressed. I eat. It's almost like well, I remember feeling this way. I felt like a slave to my stomach, like whatever,
Mhm.
happened. Right. I mean, I would just be like, I would be putting food in my mouth I didn't even want. And I didn't feel like I had any control.
Yeah, and
Imagine the
I
identity
felt
that is, right?
Yeah, and you internalize that. You
Hmm.
internalize that. And I always use this metaphor with my clients, is your brain is like a Google search engine. And whatever question you ask it, it's going to go to work to answer it. And
Yeah.
so if you're asking yourself questions day in and day out, like, why can't I stop eating? Your brain is going to answer that question and give you all of the things that are wrong with you and all of
Yeah.
the reasons why you can't stop eating. Why am I an emotional eater? What is wrong with me? Am I broken? The quality of your life is going to be based on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. And
Mhm.
you are going to start internalizing, I am an emotional eater. And it is very hard to break a habit when it is so deeply ingrained within you. It
Yeah.
is part of your identity. It is so uncomfortable to start changing that identity just by saying, okay, well, now I'm going to stop emotional eating.
Mm-hmm. It is so hard. It's very deep, and I think that's why it sometimes it's hard for women to get started, because it just seems so overwhelming. Because we know. we're comfortable, even though we're not, right? But we're familiar with how we're stuck.
Mhm.
So we don't know what it's like to be living in that freedom there. Um, so tell me a little bit more about like how do you go about working on your identity? What are the
Yeah,
steps there?
so yeah, absolutely. So number one is the first step to change is awareness,
Hmm.
because so many times we are running on autopilot all the time. We are just distracted. Life is fast paced, that we don't actually pause and ask ourselves, where does my focus go?
Hmm.
What are my thoughts? How are they causing my feelings? Because every action is based off of a feeling, which is based off of a thought you're having.
Hmm.
And so many times we think that these thoughts are factual. Like
Yeah.
we're not like, no, this is not an opinion. It's just an observation. I'm an emotional eater. And it's like, you were not born with the genetic blueprint of
Yeah.
an emotional eater.
Right.
You created that identity for yourself. And once you are able to acknowledge that all of these thoughts that you have about yourself are created throughout your life, it's
Yes.
very freeing, because if
Hmm.
they were created at some point, you can change them.
Hmm. That's so true. I wrote a couple notes there. You made me think of is that, I don't think everyone understands that we are the creator of our thoughts.
Mhm.
Is that we make our thoughts. We're in control of our thoughts. Sometimes we feel like they just happen and they must be our truth, right? And then also, like you were saying about asking those questions, like why can't I ever lose weight? Why can't I stay consistent? Your brain wants to finish those patterns. It answers the question, and it reminded me of one time I don't know, some program I was in, but they were talking about affirmations and how sometimes affirmations don't work. If you say, like, I'm a multimillionaire and I'm this and I am this, your brain is saying, no, you're not. No, you're
Yeah.
not. No, you're not. So it doesn't work. So they were talking about reframing it and saying, why are the best clients attracted to me? Why am I making such good choices? It works that same way, right? For the positive
Mhm.
things. Why is it so easy for me to care for myself? And then you have to actually think about it. And that is like stopping the ship mid ocean and turning it
Mhm.
around. So just remembering that we have the power to control our thoughts, but awareness is key. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
love what you said about being the creator of our thoughts, because there's so many times when I work with my clients, let's say, um, we'll go back to that identity of, I've always been addicted to sweets, or I'm just an emotional eater, or I just don't like working out. Whatever it is, that identity that you have for yourself, I
Hmm.
always ask, so why are you choosing to think that way? And the response is always, well, it's just, I've always been that way. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, so if you believe that the person you've always been is always going to be the person you will be in the future,
Yeah.
then do you truly believe that you're capable of change? So many people will think, well, like intellectually they'll be like, I want to change, right? And I'm pretty sure I'm capable of doing it, because they go on diet after diet.
Hmm.
But when we actually get down to it, and it comes to changing that identity, we realize that subconsciously, like so deep down, their
Yeah.
brain is saying,
Yeah.
you're not capable.
Yep.
And as long as we don't reprogram that subconscious programming, self sabotage is always going to come back in and grab you, because your brain wants to act consistent with those deep rooted beliefs of who you think you are.
Yep. So good. It's about asking the right questions.
Mhm.
And questioning our beliefs. And there's a quote I love. I don't know if I got it word for word from your presentation at the summit, but you said your identity is living proof of who you believe you are. Did
Yeah.
I get that right? I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. So if you're not happy with your results that you have right now, then you need to look at what you're believing to make that true. Because we have to,
Hmm.
everything starts with a thought.
Yeah.
Everything that is created started with a thought. So the reality you're experiencing is based on thoughts that turned into beliefs, that turned into behaviors, that's now your lifestyle, right? But the good news
Hmm.
is you can reverse that with awareness and working with a coach or somebody to help you navigate through that.
Yeah. And when we rope it in with, habits in life, you don't get what you want, you get what your habits are.
Yeah.
And because your habits are based on who you believe that you are in life, you
Mhm.
don't get what you want, you get what your identity is.
Yes. So good. And I just want to wrap up with the two-step process to change your identity so you can change your behaviors.
Hmm. Well, so I actually have a um more step by step of like a 10-step blueprint that I usually
So
give.
it's not as easy as two steps. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. But what I would say is number one is anyone who is watching this or listening to this is really sit down and write down what your identity is right now.
Mm,
And being so incredibly honest with yourself. If it feels uncomfortable, then you're probably doing it right. And getting down to that core of who do I believe that I am?
mhm.
Because if you don't know who you believe that you are at the core, then how do you know who you want to be? And then the next
Yeah.
step is that outcome or that life or whatever you want to achieve, whatever your goal is, um, ask yourself that person who has that life, those habits, who is that person? Right.
Mhm.
So if I said my goal is to be a millionaire, that person who's a millionaire, how did they get there? And who are they? How do they behave every single day?
Yeah.
Are they confident? Are they self assured? Do they wake up early? Who is that person? And am I behaving as that person today?
Mhm.
And you do not need to wait to get those things, to be a millionaire, to improve your health, to act as that person. You
Yeah.
have to act first, and then the results will follow, not the other way around.
So good. So true. I talk about the same thing in my program. And sometimes it helps to have role models. It might not be, you might not like everything about that role model, but maybe they have a certain tenacity or they have a certain, attitude, whatever it is, approach that helps you like what would, how could I embody more of that? If you don't, because sometimes we just don't know. Like I don't know. I can't even imagine myself different than I am today. It takes work. It takes
Hmm.
work. You got to be willing to do the work.
Yeah. And it
So,
doesn't happen overnight.
no,
It's not
yeah,
you
good
snap a
point.
finger and you're like, this is who I'm gonna be. And tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be that person. And anyone who ever does something big, I had to become an entrepreneur when I started my business. I had never been that person. And you do it day in and day out. And through, obviously, I take my clients through different resources and worksheets, but I was working through affirmations and visualization and journaling. You don't just snap your fingers and then overnight it's done. It's a constant process and it's worth it
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. If you're listening, we're saying you are worth it.
Hmm.
So, Sabrina, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really enjoyed our talk. Where can people get in touch with you, find out about your resources and all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me personally and have a free consultation or talk about your health goals and kind of get a blueprint or a framework of how do I start changing my habits? How do I stop this dieting that, like I said, is just keeping you in the same cycle day in and day out? They can book a free personalized health audit with me. So that's on my website, sabrinamagnan.com/audit. And they can go to my Instagram, which is Sabrina Magnan Health, And on Facebook, Sabrina Magnan, Health Coaching and Consulting.
Beautiful. And that's Magnan, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And I'll put the links in the show notes as well. So
Beautiful.
again, thank you so much. It's really been a delight, and I hope that we'll talk again soon. And to everyone listening, I hope this was beneficial to you. I know I enjoyed it. We could talk about this for days.
Yeah.
Until next time, don't forget to keep your light shining bright. Peace out.